for this very, very special program on the union budget, a panel discussion that we would like to organize here. Especially that of Dr. Avinash Dixit, Dr. Arvind Subramanian, Dr. Partha Satyashok, the former World Bank India President, Dr. Rahul Jhaga, and Dr. Shankaracharya. So it's great that in this very institute we've been able to kind of bring all of these noted economists to come over and share their ideas with you. So without much delay, may I invite on stage Dr. Ajit Ranade. Thank you, and as always, there are no penalties for claps, so the louder the better. Dr. Achintan Bhattacharya. Dr. Lakshmi Roy. And Dr. Rajesh Parchure. Thank you. You know what? The louder the claps go, the broader the smiles go. And that's a very, very nice sight to see around in the educational institutions. With that, may I now request Dr. Ranade to please give his opening remarks, and then we'll conduct panel discussion.
Good evening, everybody. And we are going to talk about the budget. I was just thinking that you probably are overexposed to it already. What is the Marathi word or English Hindi word for budget? When we say we are organizing a birthday party, so I went to our event manager. He said, "Aapka budget kya hai?" So that is the use of the word budget. So in Marathi it's called Sankalpa, Artha Sankalpa. The same word can be used in Hindi or Sanskrit. So Sankalpa means resolution. You make you resolve to do something. So you won't think मैं birthday party कर रहा हूँ. He doesn't say अच्छा आपका संकल्प क्या है? मेरा संकल्प तो मेरे को celebrate करने का है birthday. So the word budget doesn't translate very nicely into Indian languages. So we keep using the word budget. Mr. Gokhale, after whom this institution is named, we are celebrating during 2015 and 16 his 100th death anniversary and his 150th birth anniversary during this year, this course of 2015-16. So it's a very, very special year. And that just tells you that if you do the math quickly, he just lived for a very short 49 years. He retired from active teaching service at the age of 36, if I'm not mistaken, after teaching for almost 18 years in Ferguson College. And after 36, he entered public life. Among the many things that she did was also comment on the budget, which means, of course, in those days the budget was the budget presented in the UK, but for the Indian provincial government. And his sharp observations on the budget are quite well known and legendary, so much so that many years later, John Maynard Keynes made a reference to the budget observations of Mr. Gokhale. And I believe these writings are available, at least in this institute, and I hope you can make it available widely on the website. So, very quickly about the union budget that we just saw presented last week. Of course, we are going to have, the format is that we will have each of the speakers speak for about 15 minutes, and then we'll have an open discussion and Q&A. But broadly, the takeaway for me is the following. This is a budget, as you say, Artha Sankalpa. This is a proposal by the finance minister of the country to spend this much amount of money which belongs to you, belongs to us, the taxpayer. This is Hamari Tijori, we say, 20 lakh crores. And one go, he's asking permission from Parliament because the Constitution says not even a single rupee can be spent by Government of India unless prior permission is taken from Parliament. Consent, that's the process, that's called the Finance Bill. And it's 20 lakh crores this year, which is almost 1/6 of India's GDP. So in one single stroke of a pen, somebody is going to decide a plan to spend 1/6 of national income. That's why it's a big deal, very important. Now you'll say that this ruling party, in this current government, Lok Sabha, has 283 seats, right? They have an absolute majority. And the way they take permission in Lok Sabha is that you raise your hand if you are for and whatever. But if you have an absolute majority, whatever you present to Parliament and the budget bill, the finance bill doesn't need to be passed okay by Rajya Sabha. This is called a money bill. We don't need to get into that intricacy. But if you think about it, they already have 23 members. So you can just present anything, any proposal, any sankalpa, and it will be passed because we have the whip system, we have the who can dare go, right? So why so much fuss about pre-budget discussion and so much discussion and post-budget discussion? I just giving a provocative thought because it's not so simple, obviously. Even though we have a ruling party, even we have the government which enjoys an absolute majority first time in 30-35 years, each member of that party or each member of parliament is finally answerable to their constituency. So obviously you can't present something, even if it's part of a budget which will be supported by the majority party, you can't present something totally illogical, totally extremist kind of a stance. And because you will be answerable, you might, already there is murmur. This is supposed to be a strong government, but we are hearing about a murmur that maybe the EPF tax may be rolled back. This affects 70 lakh people out of a population of 1 billion. I'm not going to send a cat among the pigeons, and it's a very somewhat complicated issue. So maybe already that may partial rollback may happen. Despite this strong majority, we now have had a 3 or 4 day nationwide strike. Are you aware of it? Of jewelers. I don't know how many of you have gone to the jewelry shop. What is the strike about? Well, this budget introduced a 1% excise tax on jewelry, and I think above a particular threshold. So, उसमें क्या बड़ी बात है? If you go to buy 2 lakh rupee worth, surely 1% उसके tax. So these people are saying, we don't want this tax. We are ready to pay 1% more import duty on gold or something else, but please don't make us pay 1% excise. Why? Because they are saying, and this is I can say it among friends, they are saying they don't want to be harassed by excise inspectors. I don't know, I'm not familiar with the jewelry industry, so maybe the experts can enlighten me. So what is this mindset that which is just doesn't want to file in excise returns, challans, because they feel that this is the big danger. Same thing happened in Mumbai Corporation. I think, of course, in Pune also. And this is really letting the cat among the pigeons. For a long time, we were trying to get rid of octroi, so we replaced it with something called LBT, local body tax. So again, the main objection is we will pay any octroi you want, but don't subject us to this new return and harassment of tax inspectors. So we are a country, we really think about it, we have to think about this, that we are a country where the tax to GDP ratio is the lowest in the world among all the peer countries. This is on page 108 of the economic survey. Excellent document. I strongly recommend you read the economic survey, which is tabled in Parliament one day before the Union Budget. It's on the website. Excellent
in
2 volumes. I think this is first volume where you see India has the lowest tax to GDP ratio in the world among most countries, which means that the government of India is collecting less taxes. Sorry, the people of India are paying less taxes. Remember the excise, the jewelry guys or the LBT guys. So Indians want to pay lower taxes, and the government of India is happy to collect lower taxes. Very nice equilibrium. So we have the lowest tax to GDP ratio. Not only that, if you look at the tax collected and you break it up into direct taxes and indirect taxes. So direct tax is income tax, corporation tax, capital gains tax, wealth tax. Indirect taxes are excise, customs, and all those things. So the ratio of direct to indirect tells you how mature, how developed your economy is. We used to have 90% tax collected from indirect many years ago. Last year, the finance minister said, I promise you, this is the sankalpa. Artha sankalpa means मेरा ये संकल्प है और ये मैं जरूर इसको क्या बोलते हैं, I will achieve it. So he said, मेरा संकल्प है कि I will reach a fiscal deficit target of 3.9% during 15-16, and indeed he achieved it. Second, he said last year that from 3.9%, next year, the following year, we will target 3.5%, and indeed that was done. So next year's target is 3.5%. So this is really fantastic because it shows fiscal commitment, and I think I personally am very happy with. And that's why the stock market, I see at least one person who's the expert in financial markets. So the stock market rallied, the bond market rallied, the currency markets rallied. It's never happened after a budget that all three markets rallied. Of course, it's early days, only 3 days. Monday we might have a wake-up call tomorrow, but at least for Sunday we can revise the budget. I'll just take one more minute. Having said that, the budget in fact did a fantastic thing, I think, by sticking to this fiscal promise. Last year, the finance minister said, I promise you, this is the संकल्प, अर्थ संकल्प मुझे मेरा ये संकल्प है और ये मैं जरूर इसको क्या बोलते हैं, I will achieve it. So he said, मेरा संकल्प है कि I will reach a fiscal deficit target of 3.9% during 15-16, and indeed he achieved it. Second, he said last year that from 3.9%, next year, the following year, we will target 3.5%, and indeed that was done. So next year's target is 3.5%. So this is really fantastic because it shows fiscal commitment, and I think I personally am very happy with. And that's why the stock market, I see at least one person who is the expert in financial markets. So the stock market rallied, the bond market rallied, the currency markets rallied. It's never happened after a budget that all three markets rallied. Of course, it's early days, only 3 days here. Monday we might have a wake-up call tomorrow, but at least for Sunday we can revise.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a privilege and an honor to be at the OK Institute. Not just because I didn't notice what Ajit said about the published OK. Someone who actually commented on the budget, the former Conway budget. I didn't know that from many other things. But also because I think it's very important for a variety of things to actually move out of UTNC's Delhi and Ambani's Bombay or Tata's Bombay, as we have it, to have a real conversation. We don't do enough of it, so I think this institute at UIC is very welcome. I hope it becomes an institute where we can actually invite people from different parts of India to reflect on the budget, because what I'm taking this as is, I'll give you the view I have got sitting in that house, and what I would really like to know is how you reflect. Okay. I'm also very, very happy this year to be talking so much of the budget. This is my 17th presentation. And normally I don't do so many, because normally I'm very critical of the budget, and this year I'm not. Which is a very interesting position for me to be in and really enjoying myself. Why am I not critical? Since about October this year, there has been, I think, one of the fiercest debates in the normally very placid waters of public finance, fiscal policy, on what the government should do in terms of what is called its fiscal consolidation. And the culprit of this whole debate is my former boss, Dr. Vijay Kelkar, who is sitting here. Because what he did, regrettably for the finance ministers for years to come, is very quietly piloted through fiscal consolidation legislation for the states and the centre, which he designed. And this legislation since then has been at the cornerstone of most fiscal conversations in India, because it pertains directly to the question Ajit asked, which is that if you're going to trust the governments of India, the centre and the states, with approximately 24% of GDP, it's actually a quarter if you take all entities together, then we need to know how the government is husbanding its resources, and those headline numbers within the public domain come from this fiscal consolidation, which I will explain in a minute. Structural reform. So I commend this budget to this House.
When the invitation to deliver this talk came, it came by email from Mr. Prashant Girbani. The order in which the speakers were listed was Dr. Achintan Bhattacharya first, Dr. Ratin Roy second, and Dr. Rajesh Parjure third. An extremely scary prospect. Dr. Bhattacharya has worked for several years as Joint Secretary in the Ministry of Finance and has crafted many budgets, maybe 7 or 8. Dr. Ratin Roy is always in the thick of things in the Finance Minister's office, also crafting budgets. Whereas I am the only one who is sitting here in Pune while the budget is being made. So my problem was, after the two of them have spoken, what will remain for me to speak? So that's how so I thought it was a strange method to take revenge on me. For what reason, you can tell me later. Nevertheless, I have made a presentation on the budget 2016-17. So most of the budgets are basically mechanical, successivist and incrementalist. Nobody can remain left and nobody can remain right. Circumstances are such, our economy is such, our diversity is such that you will be knocked, wherever you say you are, you will be knocked towards the center only. This investment has been targeted at 56,500 crores. A good question to ask is, when your actual collections in the last year have been 25,000 crores, when you had budgeted for 69,000 crores, would it be prudent to budget for 56,500 crores? Exactly what results it has got, I am not sure. So the best thing would be to consolidate banks, first to consolidate subsidiaries of the banks with the principal banks, next to consolidate weak and strong banks, and then if required, a capital infusion can be made. So I am very happy that a quick capital infusion on large scale has not been made into the banking sector.
Well, for the people engaged in the budget process, it's more of a toil. It's not that happy ending always happens. And sometimes you will not believe that the middle rung officials stay interned under North Block for more than a month, where their cell phones are not allowed. They come to meet their family till the finance minister announces budget. So we got the freedom that day when the budget process of Dr. Kelkar and others, all the bureaucrats and finance ministry ended, we celebrated. So I know the other side of the picture. And second thing is that I am more of an amphibious nature. I am neither an economist. Most of the time, they try to pass legislation which bring marginal changes. I am taking these things from a pragmatic citizen's point of view. So I have some issues which I would like, because I find myself a little more comfortable. Just last year around February, we had an exercise for banking reforms, and it happened in Pune, in our institute in NIBA, on 2nd and 3rd January. And the resultant Indradhanush you see, and this financial sector delivery mechanism, which are routed through banks, are mostly driven by the public sector banks, so far as when welfare matters come, and not so far by the private sector banks, which have been given a leeway to pick and choose. So cherry picking is very much there, but you will find in all the cases, the NPA of say now is 4 lakh crores, close to 20% of the assets, which is a huge figure. I just give you some example that the NPA we talk about, a little part of it is due to malfeasance. Because in money matters there will be some maneuvering, some corruption involved, and that has happened. But most of the cases, this is due to the business cycle of the economy, as you see, and that has happened in all the cases in all the countries, whether you go by Schumpeterian cycle or any other studies that business cycle do. In the upswing phase, the issue is not that Indradhanush is good or bad. I am skeptical that the kind of time horizon we are prescribing is not perhaps a great achievement if we see the mathematics of parliamentary management, political management, or floor management, whatever way you call, which gives rise to the core of the political economy of the present. Now I hand it over to Ramana.
So, please ask a question. Your comments and suggestions would be great, but this session let's just restrict to very specific questions.
So since you're a member of the 7th Pay Commission, the company itself, that has been one of the most clowning parts of the budget. He said, I made internal provisions for the 7th Pay Commission, but how much he has, that hasn't been clear.
So panelists, please write out the questions.
One is that I'm disappointed. If you look at the budget next year, we're going back to days of impost substitution days, of protectionism, dealing with number of changes of tariff rates, which are making our trading system now far more complex and reverse directed. So that's the one extremely worrisome feature, which does not, as you know, the macroeconomics and the macro foundations. The microeconomics get wrong, you can get in trouble. So I hope that this can be corrected in the future. And second microeconomic problem I have is that not the relative neglect, but the aggressive step from promoting science and technology and innovation. I mean, even the most conservative economists accept that this is one area of government intervention is certainly it enhances welfare, productivity, and better efficient the resources. So I'm afraid both reduction in support to public funded R&D institutions, R&D, also private R&D has been now discouraged. So that is a worrisome in a microeconomic sense. It's a microeconomic sense budget is somewhat worrisome. And hopefully this can be reversed in the coming years.
That's Dr. Ratin Roy, the director at NIPSC. Dr. Travis Berkeley, the director of the institute here. Dr. Bhattacharya, and that's Dr. Anand. Thank you so much, Dr. Kelkar, and for many of the young students, please take seats. I'll just take another minute maybe. Please take a seat. Thank you.